Welcome back to Godless and Grounded. There was a time when religion made sense to people. When we didn't understand the stars, disease, or even death, religion stepped in with answers. It gave people comfort, structure, and a sense of control in a world that often felt chaotic. But today, in the 21st century, with access to knowledge at our fingertips and science unraveling mysteries once reserved for the divine, it's worth asking, does religion still make sense? Or better yet, did it ever really make sense to begin with? Let's look at what religion is supposed to do. It's meant to explain the origin of life, the universe, morality, suffering, the purpose of existence, and what happens after we die. That's a tall order. But when you start to really look at religious explanations across cultures and scriptures, things begin to fall apart quickly. Take creation stories, for example. In the Bible, it says the earth was made in 6 days, with light created before the sun, and humans made from dust and ribs. Hindu cosmology speaks of an eternal cosmic cycle involving gods like Vishnu and Shiva. Islam shares a similar creation story to the Bible, but with slightly different details. But here's the problem: they can't all be right. These narratives contradict each other. And more importantly, none of them align with what we know from science. Today, we know the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. We have geological evidence, radiometric dating, and fossils to support this. Evolution by natural selection, a well-documented and observed process, explains how life emerged and diversified over millions of years. These aren't guesses. They're the results of rigorous testing, observation, and refinement. Compare that to stories written thousands of years ago by people who thought the stars were tiny holes poked into the sky. But some might say, science doesn't have all the answers. And that's true. Science doesn't pretend to know everything. But here's the difference: science admits when it doesn't know something. Religion, on the other hand, pretends to know everything with absolute certainty. And often, it demands belief without evidence, which is the opposite of how we discover truth. Let's talk about morality. Religion often claims to be the foundation of our moral compass. But do we really need religion to know that killing, stealing, or lying is wrong? Morality exists in secular societies, among atheists, among people who've never read a holy book. In fact, some of the most peaceful, happiest countries in the world, like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, are also some of the least religious. They have low crime rates, universal healthcare, strong education systems, and overall high standards of living. Meanwhile, highly religious countries often struggle with poverty, inequality, corruption, and violence. If religion were truly the source of morality, we'd expect the most religious places to be the most moral, wouldn't we? And if we look inside religious texts, the actual books billions revere as sacred, the morality they promote isn't always admirable. In the Bible, God commands genocides, endorses slavery, and punishes people eternally for not believing in him. In the Quran, apostates can be condemned, and certain verses endorse violence against unbelievers. In the Torah, people can be stoned to death for working on the Sabbath or for being disobedient children. We don't follow those parts anymore, not because religion evolved, but because people did. Societies grew more empathetic, more educated, more connected. We started thinking critically and valuing human rights. Religion didn't lead the way. It was often dragged along, resisting every step of progress, from Galileo's discovery that the earth revolves around the sun, to the abolition of slavery, to women's rights, to LGBTQ+ acceptance. Then there's the issue of suffering. If there's an all-powerful, all-loving God, why do so many innocent people suffer? Why do babies die of cancer? Why are there earthquakes, floods, and famine? Why did pandemics kill millions? The standard religious answer is that it's part of a divine plan, or that humans sinned, or that suffering builds character. But let's be honest, those are just ways to avoid the painful truth that there may be no reason at all. When a mother loses her child in a car accident, what comfort is there in saying, it's God's will? It's not comforting. It's cruel. We wouldn't accept that reasoning from a human being. If someone intentionally let a child die and said it was part of their bigger plan, we'd call them a monster. But when it's God, somehow it becomes acceptable? That's not morality. That's blind faith. Now think about how religion shapes identity. Most people inherit their religion. A child born in Saudi Arabia is likely to grow up Muslim. A child born in Italy is likely to be Catholic. In India, they'll probably be Hindu. People adopt the beliefs they're taught, not because they're objectively true, but because they're cultural defaults. If religion were truly based on truth, it wouldn't depend on geography. And consider how many religions there are, over 4,000 documented belief systems across the globe. Every religion believes it holds the ultimate truth, but they all contradict one another. That alone should raise questions. If there truly were one all-powerful creator, why the confusion? Why allow billions of people to follow false paths? Why reveal the truth in obscure languages to small groups in ancient times, instead of clearly communicating with all of humanity in the digital age? Some will say it's about faith. That belief without evidence is a virtue. But think about that. In every other part of life, we value evidence. You wouldn't board a plane built on faith instead of engineering. You wouldn't take a medicine if it didn't pass rigorous testing. You wouldn't cross a bridge held up by belief alone. So why should the most important questions about the meaning of life and the nature of reality be treated any differently? Let's not ignore the political and social role religion has played either. Religion has been used to justify wars, colonialism, slavery, misogyny, and discrimination. It has divided people, created enemies, and slowed human progress. From the Crusades to the Inquisition, from witch hunts to suicide bombings, religion has left a bloody trail throughout history. Of course, not all religious people are violent. Many are kind, thoughtful, and loving. But those values don't come from religion. They come from shared human decency. In modern times, religion is increasingly being used to control rather than to inspire. In some countries, women are denied education or forced into dress codes because of religious law. In others, gay people are punished, even executed. Even in secular democracies, religious lobbies influence politics, science education, and reproductive rights, often based not on reason or evidence, but on doctrine. Meanwhile, the younger generation is walking away. And it's not because they're angry or rebellious. It's because the answers religion provides no longer satisfy the questions we're asking. We're no longer content with "because God said so." We want to know how things work, why things happen, and how we can make life better for ourselves and others, here and now, not in some imagined afterlife. And that brings us to one of the most powerful arguments of all: meaning. Religion claims to offer purpose, but meaning doesn't have to come from ancient texts or supernatural beings. In fact, meaning feels more real when we create it ourselves. When we love someone, help someone, build something, discover something, those are moments filled with meaning. Not because a God commanded them, but because they reflect our deepest human values. We live in a vast, mysterious universe, and that's okay. It's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to say, "I don't know," because that's where curiosity begins. That's where real discovery starts. Religion often claims to end the search for truth, but the truth doesn't need an ending. It needs open eyes, open minds, and a willingness to grow. So does religion make sense anymore? Not really. Not when it contradicts evidence. Not when it divides rather than unites. Not when it limits progress, stifles curiosity, and makes people feel guilty for simply being human. The more we understand the world, through science, through empathy, through critical thinking, the less room there is for magical thinking. And that's not a loss. That's liberation. It means we're ready to take responsibility for ourselves, our future, and our fellow human beings, without waiting for divine permission. Religion had its time. It served a purpose when we knew little and feared much. But now, we have better tools, better answers, and better questions. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we outgrew the stories and started writing a new one. A story based not on faith but on facts. Not on fear but on freedom. Not on obedience but on understanding. And maybe that's the most meaningful path of all.